Hello everyone, and welcome to another lesson. Today, we're going to try and give a few tips on using u and na. First off, what do u and na mean? They're two of the most common prepositions in Slovene. If you ask a native speaker, they'll tell you u means in or inside of something, and na means on or on top of something. Technically that's true, but if that were the case, this would be the end of today's lesson, since you'd just use u in place of the English in, and na instead of the English on. But it's not quite that simple. That's because the to in, for example, to move to Slovenia also translates as u or na in Slovene, and in those contexts it can be difficult to know which one to use. Here are some examples. The beer is in the fridge. Pretty straightforward. We expect to see the preposition u in the Slovene translation. And there it is. Pivo je u hladilniku. The beer is on the table. Here we expect to find na in the Slovene sentence. Sure enough, there's our na. Pivo je na mizi. However, like we said, both u and na are also used like the English to when expressing direction of motion. And using u or na like that is less straightforward than one would hope for. So, I'm going to the store. Is it u or na? Grem u trgovino. In this example, we use u. Why? Because of the word store. The word store or trgovina takes the preposition u. I'm going to the concert. Here we use na. Why? Because of the word concert. Koncert or concert takes na. Grem na koncert. Let's have a look at how to approach these two prepositions. Here are some theoretical pointers. Again, u and na are two of the most important prepositions in Slovene and probably one of the first ones you'll deal with. Generally speaking, u is in and na is on. But both are also used with the fourth case or the accusative to refer to a particular direction of motion. In that sense, both are like the English to. Despite them basically meaning the same thing or having the same function, they're not interchangeable. It's either u or na. Very rarely can we choose between both options, and even then we're dealing with different meanings. Now, if a noun takes u to express motion towards with the fourth case, it'll also take u to express static location with the fifth case, and vice versa. If you're at all familiar with cases, you probably know one of the uses of the fourth case, or the accusative in Slovene, is expressing motion towards something, and one of the uses of the locative, or the fifth case, is expressing static location. So the same holds true for na. If it's na when moving something somewhere, or going somewhere, it'll also be na when referring to the object as a static item, as being somewhere. The thing that changes is the case. The preposition stays the same. So basically, we can talk of u words and na words. Now the difficult bit is telling them apart. There's no single rule and at times it can be tricky, since in general it's pretty arbitrary. Since I don't want to leave you with just having to arbitrarily create and memorize huge mental tables of u words and na words, let's have a look at what we can say about using both. This is obvious, but still, generally use u with rooms, enclosures, and so on, 3D space. And use na with surfaces and two-dimensional space. A much more important tip in my opinion, however, is to use na with abstract concepts. Again, keep in mind some things simply won't make sense and you'll just learn them by heart. Let's focus on abstract concepts for now. Those are important. What do we mean by abstract concepts? Well, ask yourself if you can touch it. If you can't, consider it abstract. I'm not saying it's a foolproof approach, but at least it's a start. If it's abstract, as a default, go for na. If you know you have to decide between the two, so either u or na, and neither make much sense, go for na again. Let's have a look at some examples. Dopust, izlet, koncert, obisk, počitnice, pogreb, poroka, potovanje, predstava, pregled, razstava, sestanek, sprehod, tekma, zabava. What did the following words have in common? They all denote concepts. You can't really touch a wedding, and you can't really touch a basketball game. To go on an outing is iti na izlet. To go for a checkup is iti na pregled. To go to a party is iti na zabavo. So you can see why dealing with prepositions can be tricky. Anyway, we use the same Slovene preposition, na, with all the other words on screen. Another similar use of na is when talking about institutions. Let's have a look at those now. Again, please keep in mind what follows isn't a fixed rule and it won't always hold true. More than anything else, it's my own attempt at making some sense of the use of u versus na. However, I do think the following is good enough to mention though, and it can come in handy. When talking about an institution, say for example a bank, we use the same word for the building and the pretty abstract thing that is a bank. If we have the organization or institution in mind, we use na. So, if we're going to a bank for a specific reason that obviously has to do with the bank, it's na. If we really want to emphasize someone or something going or being inside of the building that is the bank, we can also use u, but that's much rarer. I'm mentioning it simply because with most words it's exclusively either u or na, and the other option sounds completely incorrect to the native speaker. Here, technically, at least technically, we have both options available, but na is by far the more common one. If we really wanted to make a case for u, we could come up with a sentence like it started pouring, so we quickly went inside of the bank, or something like that. But generally with institutions or organizations like this, where the majority of people go there for a specific reason, use na. It's not bomb-proof, but it's good enough. Let's have a look at some examples. Agencia, Academia, Ambasada, Banka, Fakulteta, Inštitut, Konzulat, Ministrstvo, Policija, Pošta, Sodišče, Univerza, Upravna enota, Urad, Veleposlaništvo. These are the main ones. This institution category of mine is very fuzzy, but if it helps you remember these words in any way, I still think it's useful. To not make any unnecessary mistakes though, the words on screen are pretty much the main ones I have in mind. With other places or organizations you'd consider institutions as well, it's usually u. So if we have a look at the words on screen to try and define our fuzzy institutions category, we see it has to do with official business, bureaucracy, public servants, clerks, or just people in positions of higher authority than ourselves. Now let's have a look at some exceptions where we're likely to make a mistake. Here are some u words. With some of these, you're likely to want to think institution. Bolnišnica, bolnica. Dom za ostarele. Gledališče. Hotel, kazino, kino, knjigarna, knjižnica, lekarna, muzej, študentski dom, vrtec, zdravilišče, zdravstveni dom, zapor. Keeping the word institution in mind, I think the most likely candidates for mistakes are words like bolnica, dom za ostarele, vrtec, zdravilišče, zdravstveni dom, zapor. Again, all of the words on screen go with u. So far, we've mentioned using na with abstract concepts and our so-called institutions. Moving on, let's have a look at food and drinks. Whenever you'd like to say to go for plus food or drinks in English, use the verb to go or iti in Slovene together with na. Here is a list of things you can literally go on or na in Slovene, which like we've said is to go for in English. Burek, čaj, kava, kebab, kosilo, kremšnita, kuhano vino, malica, pica, pijača, pivo, sladoled, tortica, večerja, zajtrk. So food and drinks, as long as it's a cafe or restaurant we're talking about, go with na. All the other rules apply as well. For example, iti na kavo is to go for a coffee, biti na kavi is to be having a coffee. Motion towards plus accusative, na kavo, and static location plus locative, na kavi. We have one more thing to cover with na, and that's using it to describe attending courses, lessons, training sessions, organized activities, and so on. I don't know if there's a better term to describe this use of na other than organized activities. Anyway, the formula goes as follows. na plus the verb hoditi or iti plus activity. Hoditi literally means to walk. But used in this sense, it doesn't have anything to do with walking. It implies doing something regularly, attending or participating in something, often an organized activity in the form of a course or class. You can use iti instead of hoditi here as well, but that means once or right now, as in I'm leaving for basketball now, or something similar. Hoditi, like we've said, implies regularly plus often organized plus activity. Let's have a look at some examples. Hodim na tečaj slovenščine means I'm taking a Slovene course. Vsak teden hodim na šah means I play chess every week, but it implies having a coach and it being organized. I don't know if you can say to practice chess in English. If yes, then it's more to practice chess. Vsak torek hodim na yogo means I do yoga every Tuesday. Again, it's evident from the verb hoditi that it's an organized activity. Hodim na karate means I'm taking karate classes. Now let's review everything we've said about na so far. Use na with abstract concepts. If you're not sure, but you know you have to decide between the two and it's somewhat abstract, go for na. Things like social events and other abstract things take na. Concert, party, and wedding all take na, for example. Institutions is a pretty weak category, but still, if you're going somewhere to deal with a public servant or to do some official business, chances are it's na. But check the list again, since it includes most words that fall into this category. Other ones go with u. The English to go for plus food or drinks is the Slovene iti plus na plus food and drinks. Iti na kavo, iti na kosilo, iti na pijačo, and so on. To describe taking lessons or classes, use hoditi together with na and the activity in question. Now let's take it a step further and add some more items. Use na with islands, peninsulas, and archipelagos. As always, there are exceptions, and it's u Veliko Britanio, by the way. But it's na Kubo, na Taiwan, and na Malto, for example. With countries and regions that end in ska or shka, always use na. To go to Hungary is iti na Mađarsko, and to go to Gorenska is iti na Gorensko. With mountains, hills, lakes, and cardinal directions, use na as well. To go to Triglav is iti na Triglav. To go to a lake is iti na jezero. And to go south is iti na jug. Well, I think that's plenty on using na. Hopefully, you'll find it useful. As far as u goes, use it with practically everything else. Countries that don't end in ska or shka, cities, and everything else that you feel is more three-dimensional than two-dimensional. In general, of course, in general. You can't avoid exceptions. Speaking of exceptions, let's wrap this lesson up with a list of things where you're likely to make a mistake. Okay, so here are a couple of words where I think it's more likely to make a mistake, since these don't follow the guidelines we've laid out. On the balcony is na balkonu, even though you can think of a closed balcony as a 3D space. You can think of a center as being abstract or more two-dimensional than three-dimensional, but in the center or downtown is still u centru. In the hallway is na hodniku. Hrib or hill is an elevated surface, and so it always takes na. However, the plural of hrib, hribi, or hills, is part of a phrase that simply means to go hiking or mountaineering. With the phrase, it's always iti u hribe, and never iti na hribe. If we have a particular hill, mountain, plateau, pass, ridge, or so on in mind, it's again na. Only the phrase is u, but I'm mentioning it because hiking is pretty popular in Slovenia, and you'll hear the phrase a lot. A park is clearly a two-dimensional surface, but we always use u with park. To be at the park is biti u parku. Podjetje or company is pretty abstract, and you could almost think of it as an institution as well, but it's iti u podjetje. At the company is u podjetju. In the attic is na podstrešju. To be in the shade is biti u senci, just like in English, which makes sonce or sun all the more strange. But first, služba or work. Služba or work is definitely abstract, and in that way you could argue for na. It's always u, however. To go to work is iti u službo. To be at work is biti u službi. To be in the sun is biti na soncu for some reason, even though senca or shade goes with u. Stranišče or restroom is clearly a room, and we said rooms take u. However, it behaves similarly to the words we classified as institutions. Iti na stranišče basically means going to the restroom to do number 1 or 2 or something restroom related. Just like with institutions, you could technically come up with a scenario where you could use u, but you would be strictly referring to going inside of the room and not doing anything restroom related. Both stranišče and vc or wc take na. Tujina means abroad, but it's a noun in Slovene. As far as abstract things go, it's a clear-cut example of something abstract, but it's always u. He moved abroad is preselil se je u tujino, for example. In the garden is na vrtu. However, in the kindergarten is u vrtcu, and at the zoo is u živalskem vrtu. As you can see, dealing with u versus na can be pretty arbitrary and annoying at times. But it's one thing to know there are words that behave unpredictably, and another to not have any idea of how to deal with the majority of them, where we can make some sense of their use and what's going on. Hopefully, today's lesson left you with some tools, albeit rusty and at times unreliable ones, of tackling this problem. Good luck, study hard, and aim for the stars.